Chapter 1 is going to deal with the study of life. And as we look at things around us, we identify them as living or not living. And we're going to look at the characteristics of those things and how the interaction between not living or abiotic and living, which is biotic things, interact. So first of all, life exists most everywhere on the planet Earth. And the Earth possesses a great variety of diverse life forms. And that's really easy to see when you look at all the different organisms that you know that are alive around you here in Missouri, much less the ones we know are available in the tropical rainforest. All living things have certain characteristics in common as well. And we're going to take a look at those things that they have in common to be considered alive. So living things are organized. They're not just haphazardly thrown together. They acquire materials and energy, like we do for eating, plants do through photosynthesis. All living things reproduce. And that does not mean that every organism within a species reproduces, but the species as a whole can reproduce. Otherwise, there wouldn't be more of them in the following generations. All living things also respond to stimuli. They're homeostatic, meaning that we have conditions that need to be held the same for an organism to live. All living things grow and develop, and they have the capacity to adapt to surroundings. Living things are also organized in a hierarchy of levels, and the first thing we looked at was them being organized. So atoms go together to make up molecules. Molecules make up cells. Cells make up tissues. Tissues make up organs. Organs make up organ systems. And then organ systems go together to make up a complete organism. The cells are the smallest unit of life. And a tissue are a group of cells that are similar and have a similar function. And we put those together and form a tissue. So here we have a nerve cell making up nerve tissue, or a plant cell making up leaf tissue. When you put several different tissues together, it can form an organ. So a leaf is an organ for a plant, whereas nerve cells go together to make up nerve tissues that go together with different tissues to make up the human brain. And then those organ systems, such as the brain, the digestive system, circulatory system, and so on, are going to go together to form an organism. Living things also need an outside source of material and energy to maintain the organization and to carry on life activities. So we need a food source of some sort. This energy that it gives us is the capacity to do work. Growth is when cell sizes increase or the number of cells increase, and that produces growth of an organism. So all living things grow. They also develop or change as they get older from conception to death. So a seed, for example, for this tree, this is much different looking, and it has developed and changed into the tree that it's become from the time that it germinated to the time that it would be cut down or it would be killed due to a lightning strike or other things such as parasites or ground erosion and things like that where the tree would die. All living things get classified. So living organisms are assigned to groups based on their similarities. Systematics is the discipline of identifying and classifying organisms. And there's so many different organisms, it takes quite a while to classify them. So we've broken them down into groups. And the first group we're going to talk about are called domains. Domains are the largest classification category. So if you can imagine taking all living things and putting them into 3 separate domains, that's how we've classified them in one large group into 3 smaller groups. So biologists assign organisms to one of 3 domains based on the biochemical and genetic evidence. We're going to talk more in depth about a prokaryote. Prokaryotes lack a membrane-bound nucleus, which is different from eukaryotes. And eukaryotes have membrane-bound nucleuses. These are 2 types of cells. We are made up of eukaryotes. Bacteria are prokaryotes. In the domain Archaea, it's made up of unicellular or single-celled prokaryotes. So these are early cells that have no nucleus that is membrane-bound. They can be found in environments that are really too hostile for other life forms, such as thermal vents or polar ice caps. The domain Bacteria, these are also unicellular prokaryotes. So they're like the Archaea, but they are living everywhere, not in odd places like thermal vents and polar ice caps. But still, they're prokaryotic, no membrane-bound nucleus. And they're found almost everywhere on Earth. Some bacteria cause disease, and those are the ones that probably get the most attention, but we have a lot that are beneficial as well, such as the ones that live in your gut and help us to digest food. The third domain is eukarya. So if you are a eukaryote, or the organism you're looking at is a eukaryote or has eukaryotic cells which have membrane-bound nucleuses in them, then you're considered in the domain eukarya. Most of the domain eukarya are further categorized into one of the four kingdoms: the Protista kingdom, the fungi kingdom, the Plantae, and the Animalia. So this is just a diagram that shows us the qualifications for being in each of the four kingdoms. If you're in the Protista, these are complex single cells. Some are multicellular. They absorb food for nutrition or absorb nutrition. They photosynthesize or they ingest it, which they envelop it and take it in. Examples of these would be protozoans, algae, water molds, and slime molds. Fungi are unicellular. Some of them are. Most are multicellular. They have filament forms that are specialized with complex cells, and they get nutrition by absorbing their food, such as mold, yeast, and mushrooms, fungus, things like that. The Plantae kingdom are multicellular, and they have specialized complex cells. They photosynthesize to make their food, such as moss, ferns, pine trees, non-woody flowering plants, anything in the plant kingdom. Animalia are multicellular with specialized complex cells, and they ingest food such as sea stars, earthworms, finches, raccoons, invertebrates, fishes, reptiles, amphibians, birds, mammals. We are, of course, considered in the Animalia kingdom. Categories of classification. So, we first take all living things and break it into three different domains. Within those domains are kingdoms. Those kingdoms are broken down into phylums. Each phylum is broken down into classes, classes into orders, orders into family, family into genus, and genus into species. So these are the most specific or the least inclusive. These are the most general or most inclusive. You need to know this order as well. And this just gives you categories of classification. So this is how we are classified. So we're in the domain eukarya because we have a cell that has the membrane-bound nucleus, our cells that have those. We're in kingdom Animalia because we're multicellular, we're motile, and we ingest food. We're in the phylum Chordata because we have a dorsal supporting rod and nerve cord. We're in the class, phylums are broken down into classes, class Mammalia because we have hair and mammary glands. Within the class Mammalia, we're in the order Primates, we're adapted to climb trees. Within the order of Primates, we're in the family Hominidae, which means that we can walk upright. We're in the genus Homo, which means large brain and use tools. Notice that is written italicized and capital H. We're in the species Homo sapiens. So first letter is capitalized, second one of the second word is not, and they're italicized. If you're handwriting this, you would underline them. And this means we have body proportions to modern humans. So taxonomy is the assignment of a binomial name to each species. So we have two-word names. The genus name and then the species name. We, like I said before, we capitalize the genus, put both of them in italics. Capitalize the genus. We do not capitalize the species. So Homo sapiens, which are what we are, and the Pisum satavium, which is the garden pea. And that's their genus and species name. Felis domesticus is the common house cat, or the house cats that we have now. That's their genus and species name. The last thing we're going to look at is the organization of the biosphere. Bio means life, sphere means ball, so it's the zone of air, land, and water at the surface of the earth where living organisms are found. A population are all the members of a species within a certain area. A community are all the different populations in the same area. An ecosystem, by definition, is a community that interacts among themselves and with the physical environment. So when we put our living and non-living things within our community together, it forms an ecosystem. We characterize ecosystems by chemical cycling. Chemicals move from one species to another. And energy flow flows from the sun through the plants through the food chain. And this is an example of what we would see as an ecosystem. And we see the flow of energy from the sun to the plants. Of course, every living thing gives off heat in some form, and that energy is transferred to heat and to the organism that consumes it. So we see it going from the plant to the rabbit, and from the rabbit to the hawk in this case. And then we also have a decomposition that happens and chemical cycling that's going on as those chemicals that are from the dead and decaying organisms or from the feces and waste that are put off, those are cycled back into other forms that can be used again in the cycle. Climate largely determines where ecosystems are found around the globe. The two most biologically diverse ecosystems are the tropical rainforest and the coral reefs. And we know that because there's so many different colors, so many different things. In fact, there's so many different organisms in both that we not really sure what all of them are. So why is this the most diverse? Because they have the most abundant sunshine and the warmest temperatures. The human species. Human species tends to modify existing ecosystems for its own purpose. Tropical rainforests and coral reefs are threatened because human population increases and we go and we modify those ecosystems. We depend on healthy ecosystems for food, medicine, and raw materials, so it's really important for us to make sure that we take care of the globe that we're on. Biodiversity is differences in living things, so this encompasses the total number of species, the variability within the genes of those species, and the ecosystems where they live. There are as many as 5 million to 30 million species on Earth. Human activity causes the extinction of about 400 of these species per day. So this concludes your first flipped video or flipped assignment that you're supposed to take notes on for advanced biology. You are probably going to have to slow the video down, pause it as you go through, and write the things down that you need. Listen to it a couple times if you need to, but knowing the information on here is really, really important. So hopefully this will lead to success in the advanced biology classroom.